he was like middle, maybe 500 or 600. I don't think he was
Good evening, everybody.
running, throwing anything up.
I'm Darren McCann, Executive Editor of the Coastal Point newspaper. Welcome to the 2024 Bethany Beach Candidates Night Forum. If everybody could make sure their cell phones are muted, please. And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First off, we want to thank the town for providing the venue and resources for this. It really should be applauded that the town is so accommodating and does not suggest questions or review the questions we prepared first. That's big. We want to thank the candidates for coming here to address you personally. And last but certainly not least, thank you to the audience and following online for caring enough to learn more about these candidates. This is a big deal, getting to choose who makes the decisions that impact our day-to-day lives. And you are all to be commended for coming together here tonight to make this happen. We have 5 candidates competing for 4 seats. The seats are 2-year terms. The election will be held Saturday, September 7th from noon to 6 p.m. In alphabetical order, we have incumbent Ron Califf, challenger Russell Evans. Califf, I apologize. Challenger Russell Evans, who is unable to be here tonight, incumbent Mickey Hinman, incumbent Rich McHugh, and challenger Robert Rush. Ladies and gentlemen, your candidates for Bethany Beach Town Council. Our format tonight is each candidate's going to have 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and then I'll ask them a few relatively broad questions, giving them each 2 minutes to answer. When their time gets down to 30 seconds, I'll raise my hand as a signal. When time expires, I will break in, but with an incredibly charming manner that I carry. Following that, we will take audience questions until we're done. Mr. Evans asked that I read a statement for all of you, and we decided it would be best to share that first before we get to the sitting candidates tonight. Unfortunately, due to prior vacation plans, I cannot attend today. I wish I could, and thanks for understanding. I've been coming to Bethany since 1958, spent all of my childhood summers here and worked all summers here from when I was 11 years old, serving ice cream, kitchen help, and a Bethany Beach Patrol lifeguard. I've been running my business, commercial printing, since 1978. I have great knowledge running a business all these years and have employed almost 1,000 employees over that time. I understand what fiscal responsibility is and will be sure to have a close eye on how and what the town spends with the revenue received. Some things I've done outside my business: he was past chairman at the American Red Cross, past president of Executive Association in New Jersey, volunteered constantly with many nonprofits, including JC's, Kiwanis Club, Elks, United Way, Community Food Bank, and the Red Cross. A retired Rotarian and Paul Harris Fellow, the highest honor within Rotary. Been told by many, and including Mayor Hardiman, that it is an unwritten rule that I should be on a committee before I can be considered eligible to run for office. I have lots of experience on committees, but not in Bethany due to living and working in New Jersey. Currently, Bethany is my release from work to spend quality family time and take care of my 94-year-old mother who lives here. I care deeply about Bethany Beach and want to contribute to the town in ways to keep this town the quiet resort I grew up in. I am all about the details and feel the town could use my help. I am not for the wind farm or the bribe, as I call it. I feel there is much more to know before this project can move forward. I consider myself a naturalist and love nature and the outdoors. I feel running the power lines under the bay all the way to the power plant would cause a trauma to the bay that would take years to undo. I'm not against green energy, but feel we need to be smart about how and where it is done. I'd like to ask all the other candidates how they stand on the wind farm today, so we are all on public record. I'm running as a non-resident, but soon will be retiring to Bethany. If you vote for me, I'll work for you and be transparent with all issues where the residents and landowners should all have input. Since the mayor has endorsed the other 4 candidates because she doesn't know me, I need your vote to help me to win. Thanks for coming out and supporting Bethany. Russell Evans. And I'm pretty sure you guys are done hearing my voice tonight, so we're going to get to these guys up here. Mr. Califf, you have 3 minutes for your introduction, sir.
Thank you, Darren. And good evening, all. It's good to see everybody out here tonight. I am Ron Califf, current council member, and as well as the current vice mayor. Being on council has allowed me to be directly involved with town issues, town efforts, from our solid finances to safety and transportation, to flooding mitigation, wetlands protection, beach replenishment, and the things that keep Bethany the quiet, safe business, resident, and visitor-friendly town that it is. I'm also chair of the town Stormwater and Flood Committee, and I'm proud of the assistance we as a committee have been able to bring to the citizens and the town. We have sponsored regional stormwater prevention experts from the University of Delaware and the Center for the Inland Bays at our well-attended and public committee meetings. We have developed the Help the Town of Bethany Beach Fight Flooding initiative with well-distributed pamphlets, and we have kept our residents advised on the status of the numerous town and regional flood prevention efforts that are underway. We start this fall, our speakers coming again with DENREC experts on FEMA, as well as the DENREC AI ADAPT program to directly advise residents of alterations they can make on their property to help protect it. Our first fall meeting will be October the 3rd. I am also an active member of the 4th of July Committee, a market manager for the Farmers Market, an active South Coastal Village volunteer, and my wife and I are third-year host families for the incredible Operation Seize the Day program starting again in this coming week, providing free and much-deserved vacations for military families. I love this town, and I request your support, allowing me to continue serving on the town council. Thank you.
Mr. Hinman.
All right, thank you. This is really a nice forum, so thanks for creating this opportunity for us. This is great. So I want to, some of you might know a little bit about this, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. I was born in Wilmington, lived there really all my life until we moved here with a couple of years in the Middle East for work. My mom and dad were actually born and raised in Crisfield, Maryland, not too far from here. And we had a home there or they had a second home there for a long time. So I never really came to any of the beaches that often. We went to Crisfield, hung out, and our big trip was going down to Ocean City and spending a day at the inlet, right? Walk the boardwalk and go back to Crisfield. But things changed a little bit as we got a little bit older. I met my wife in college. We got married. I joined this really huge family. Some of you know. But our introduction really to Bethany was my sister-in-law, Lisa Coldarn, you might know, and her husband bought a place in Lake Bethany. I mean, this was probably 40 years ago. But that then sort of enticed my mother and father-in-law, Glenn and Lenore Thomas, to buy a place in Bethany West. And, I didn't realize at the time what a foundational event that was, because that truly became our happy place for this really big family to be able to come together, enjoy each other. And it was a time we didn't have a lot of money, right? We couldn't go a lot of fancy vacations. It was nice just to come here, hang out, and go to the beach and as Ron talked about, in a really safe environment. So fast forward a little bit, ended up working for DuPont for 40 years, retired a couple years ago, still doing a little bit of work. And when we started to think about, and when we were in the Middle East, we were really thinking about where do we want to retire to, right? And there were a couple things that we were thinking about, but really, to be honest with you, Bethany was the ace in the deck, right? And we moved, we sold our home in Wilmington, moved here in 2017. And it truly, Karen and I, and I've said this to you all, or some of you all, that we literally sort of kick ourselves every morning and go, what a great place to be, right? And be fortunate to be able to retire, but to be here. But fast forward a little bit more, right? You begin to think about why is it this such a great town? It's because a lot of people have donated their time, their energy over the years to make it that way, right? We have a great town staff, we've got great leaders, and so this was an opportunity to get back involved with it. My wife's really involved in some things around food security, and I've been working on the bicycle and pedestrian safety, was on the finance committee for a little bit with Jerry, and really excited about what's to come. We've had a great, I think, 2 years that we'll get to talk about a little bit more. So it feels like to me just a wonderful time to be able to give back a little bit, to work with in a collaborative way with our colleagues and the town staff, and to try to make a difference and sort of leave a legacy for what's to come. So thank you.
Mr. McHugh.
Hi, my name is Rich McHugh. I've been an incumbent on the town council now since this past spring, when I was honored enough to follow in the footsteps of longtime member Lou Kilmer, the legendary Lou Kilmer, which sets a whole new standard for what I've got to do. And since that time, I've been very fortunate to work with a bunch of really dedicated, including some folks that are up here tonight, dedicated people, both in the council and just on the staff of this town that we live in. We're lucky to have such a dedicated staff, I think, here. By way of my background, I'm also from Wilmington. We've got a Wilmington contingent tonight here. I was born in Wilmington. I have been coming to Bethany all my life as a vacationer, as a father, later as a father. I did leave Wilmington to attend Georgetown University, where I went to college and law school there, and spent my whole life as a lawyer in private practice in DC for all that does. I came here 20 years ago to buy a house with the intention that I would someday come back here permanently. I then, a couple years ago, retired from the practice of law, having done probably everything I could do in that field. Came back here to love, and my vacation home became a home, no longer a vacation home. And I decided to get myself involved with what was going on around town, and the first thing I did is join this group called the Bethany Beach Landowners Association, or the BBLA, many of which are in the room today. It was great. I also ended up serving as its vice president up to when I joined the council this past spring. The time there was great for me because I got to learn what the issues were, but more importantly, I think, I got to learn who the people were in this town. And I knew it was a great opportunity. I know it's a great place to be, having been here for many years. But man, I just really learned the quality of the folks that we have here and how lucky we are to live here. In addition to that, I've served on the town's Board of Adjustments, which handles variance issues, real estate issues, and things of that sort. I also joined St. Anne's Church and joined Cripple Creek Golf Club in hopes that my golf game would get better. That did not work, but I'm still working on that. I guess when I think of Bethany, I think of it as a small town that works. It works extremely well. And we just have to keep it going. The demographics of this area suggest that we're going to get bigger, maybe not older, but at least not younger as we get bigger. And I think it's going to continue to put pressure, okay,
You still have 30 seconds.
on us to maintain the level and quality of our services, but in a bigger community, potentially bigger community, with need for more business, more successful business, to service those people who are going to be living here. So we've got to keep it going. I think Will Rogers said that even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. And I just think we have to keep moving. So.
Mr. Rush.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Means a lot. Introduce myself as a newbie. Name is Bob Rush. I'm currently a resident of Bethany Beach on Pennsylvania Avenue with my wife, Lisa. We've been residents since 2021. We've owned our home since 2014. However, I've been coming to Bethany, much like these gentlemen here, since I was a baby, right? My parents have a place on 2nd Street. I grew up here. I worked at the Holiday House, for those of you that remember the Holiday House. when it was the only place in town. That buffet was wonderful. I did a lot of the breakfast prep, so if you had any issues, that could have been me. The shack on the beach, had a lot of great times there. But Bethany, for me and my family, truly is home. So my wife, we have 3 children, all of whom are grown out. 2 are working, one's in grad school. They too have experienced Bethany. Having grandparents that were here, we were here every weekend before we had our home. We vacationed here, and then they were lucky enough to spend many summers working here. My oldest worked for Mr. Steen on the beach. My son was a lifeguard for 7 or 8 summers. He still, when he comes back to visit, works on the weekends. So a lot to said about the leadership of that patrol is outstanding, and I feel fortunate that he could grow up with that patrol as he matured as a man. And my youngest has been serving ice cream and coffee at Marines for 7 or 8 years as well. She's off at grad school now. So suffice to say, Bethany is very important to our family. It is our home now. As far as council, I am on the Budget and Finance Committee. I've learned quite a bit in 1 year under the tutelage of Mr. Morris and Mr. Shepley and many others that are there. The one thing that I have realized is it's never as simple as it may seem. When you get into these committees, some of the simple questions when you walk around here as a resident, there's always multiple angles to it and many points of view. But when I talk about my family and I get to, well, why am I running? I want to be clear. Yes, there's an open position because someone is retiring. 30 seconds. But it's because of my love for this town, and I want to serve this town, right? I want to serve it in a capacity from always being centered on what's in the best interest of the town in every decision that's made. As far as platform, there's 3. I think we're going to cover them. Number 1 is from a financial perspective. 2 is safety. And 3 is truly just from a point of serving the town from a best interest perspective. Thank you.
We're going to go to 2 minutes for answer on these questions, and we're going to start with Mr. Hinman. What is your take on the current state of the town?
Thank you. A great question. When you think about the current state, I sort of reflect a little bit on having just been on the council for 1 term so far, what we accomplished just in that last 2 years, because that really becomes a cornerstone for what we're doing and what we will be doing. But we completed a strategic plan with a lot of community involvement. I was chatting with some folks before that, which is really a great document. We authorized the Collins Street, Kent, Wellington pathway, which I think is a significant way to reduce risk on that. I think I'm very proud of that. We added some parking across the street. Again, it's all about sort of how do you manage growth. I think you mentioned that, Rich, and how you do that in a responsible way. We've had a big initiative where we haven't completed it yet, but around water remediation, particularly on the north side of town with the Steel Dam project. We still have work to do on that, but hopefully that's very proud that we've taken the next steps with that. We've installed some new crossing lights and lowered the speed limit on 26. That was something that we actually worked with our neighbors on, and they sort of backed off a little bit, and we said, we're going to go ahead and work with DelDOT to try to push that. So that was great. We've really revitalized, Teresa Keels here, she and I had the pleasure of leading the pedestrian and bicycle committee with her. And we've really tried to revitalize that, right, and really get people involved. We've got a great team. So I think the current state is really, really strong. Financially, we're in great shape, and that has to do with a lot of years and people. We have very little debt, right? Gives us a lot of flexibility to maintain and continue to make the kind of adjustments we need to deal with growth and the like. So I think the current state's extremely strong, but we've got all kinds of opportunities in front of us that I think we'll get a chance to talk some more about shortly. So,
Mr. McHugh.
Well, in a word, I'd say it's excellent. And the reasons for that are, I guess, not only the things that we're doing or have done, but the things that are on our agenda now to talk about doing in the future. I mean, this is a very forward-looking town, I think. You know, the things that we're thinking about are the things that are going to be on our plate soon. And you can't wait for them to get here. You have to think ahead for that. From a technology standpoint, I guess I've really marveled at the technology advances that we've gone through in the last year or so in terms of our new website, the new app for what's going on around town, the Beach Safe app that we have. So technology has been great. I honestly have to tell you that the reason for this, we just had a retirement last week of our soon-to-be former mayor, and she's a lot of the reason why we're here where we are. And I don't think you can answer this question without calling that out and saying that we're where we are to a large extent because she is where she's been, and working with a great town and, again, dedicated town staff. So it's excellent, but the reason it's excellent is for a lot of people working very hard.
Mr. Rush.
Thank you. I'm going to echo a lot of what you heard. This town, I think, is in a terrific position. I'll take it first from the area that I've been most involved with to date is on the financial side. I think that goes back to many years of how this town has been managed and how it's been handed off to everyone who's stepped in the shoes of those that have retired. We are well positioned financially, which only keeps us at a position of strength to the extent we ever run into issues or concerns. It allows the council to act proactively in what they want to achieve and not reactively, which a lot of other towns can't say. So from that perspective, that's where I start. Secondly, from the engagement that I've seen with the council, I can honestly sit here and say I'm not here because I have any issues or true concerns. I'm here because of the opportunity that I'd be humbled and honored to serve on the council. I do believe, obviously, there's areas that anything can improve on, but I think it's on the margins right now. Not to say that there won't be other issues that come forward, but I think the framework that is set up, the relationships that I've seen, the way that the communication occurs, I think we're well set to move forward from a position of strength.
Mr. Califf.
Well, I'm going to reaffirm, I think the state of the town is very good. We've had good people working very hard to maintain that status. We have an excellent staff. Our town manager is excellent. But it only starts with him and of course council. I mean, we have a great group of people that work at every single position, critical positions throughout the town. But I also think that you can never remain complacent. We have to get better. We have to look forward to things. We have to, make sure we're addressing all the issues. And we certainly have some outstanding issues coming up, some important ones, and there will be some difficult decisions to make in the future. Thank you.
Going to bring us into this next question pretty smoothly. Mr. McHugh will lead off. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the town over the next 2 years?
I guess from my perspective, the biggest problem that we have to contend with or solve is the flooding issue. And the reason I say that is it affects us as people, it affects our community day to day, it affects the housing values of our homes, which is very important or should be very important to all of us. And frankly, it also affects our businesses. We need our businesses to thrive so they can continue to serve the rest of us. So there are three different issues that contend with this, and we're going to have to find a way, i.e. probably need to find the money to get this project through so we can, if not eliminate, at least significantly reduce the flooding issue that's been haunting us for years. And as we're thinking about doing it, the issues of climate and the issues of sea level issues just make it harder and harder to solve. So the sooner we get to it, I think the better.
Mr. Rush.
For me, there's always safety and flooding are at the forefront of everything, right, in my opinion, from that perspective. But the next biggest challenge that I'm I feel as though we're going to be faced with is what I call regional aspects that come around us and impact us from outside of the town, be it state issues, county issues, DENREC, those type of things. Just being on firm footing and ready to react, because it feels as though there's going to be a lot more of that potentially as we come down, whether there's budgetary issues that impact other jurisdictions that then put things on the table for the council to deal with. That would probably be the one on the horizon. I can't sit here and tell you that I have the answers for that, but what I do believe, and what I said in my prior answer was, I believe the council is well positioned to be ready to react.
Mr. Califf.
Well, I think, controlling the flooding is a very big issue in this town. It's been an effort going forward for quite a while. The flap dam, I guess, is probably I won't say the ultimate, but it's certainly the most important thing that we need to push to get to the finish line. This year, it's been good because we've finally gotten through a lot of engineering studies and modeling. We've gotten the approval of Ocean View, which was a big step. We also got the sign off of our legislators, and to get past, Mr. Hawker and Ron Gray, that's a big hurdle, and that happened this past winter. The next we're into permits on the dam, and that's going to be just as daunting an issue. This means we're going to have to get DENREC approval, and we need to get the Corps of Engineers approval. Unfortunately, DENREC is not the most cooperative of organizations of late. Hopefully, with time and with changing of administrations, that will become much better. I would hope that happens this year, but there is certainly efforts going on right now. The dam is in its permitting stages right now, so it is going through DENREC and the Corps of Engineers. But that's an arduous journey, and we're going to have to press that and be very on top of it. So, thank you.
Mr. Hinman.
Yeah, I appreciate all those comments. I think they're all spot on. I actually wanted to step back a second and just sort of think about, when you asked about the current state, because it leads right into the questions about the challenges we have going forward. One of the biggest things we had last year, and I think everybody on this council that was there remembered having to deal with the situation with the top of our police leadership when that came up. You talk about a gut punch, right? But how the council, how the leadership handled that, and how we really did the right thing, I believe, and I'm not going to get into the adjudication of it, but in terms of how it was handled, and creating the next step leaders in our police department was fantastic. And I think we can all take that kind of courageous stand, as you talked about, Rich. These will be hard decisions, right? But to reflect back on that, they're going to be very different than that, obviously. But be courageous, be thoughtful, have that vision. What's the right thing to do? Engage people, and then move forward. So the things that come to mind for me, I would say safety. Teresa and I at our meeting where we really started our bicycle and pedestrian meeting this week, highlighting the 14-year-old kid that got hit by a car just a few miles north of here, right? And that's the thing that haunts us all the time. I mean, we literally talk about what can we do to prevent that? What can we do? So that's always going to be a challenge. The water issue you all spoke to, and just the growth is a real challenge because the growth is not coming obviously from Bethany. I mean, there's only a few more lots you can develop, right? It's just humongous growth that's going on around us, and will probably continue. And I reflect back a little bit to something that Cliff said about, Ron said about, Rich said about Rosemary, and, well, somebody said. But, you know what, one of the things that Rosemary led us in a lot of ways, but her collaboration with all the players in the communities, right? And that, dealing with this growth issue, is exactly what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to double down on that, because we don't control a lot of that, right? It's through influence, it's by engagement, it's by forming those partnerships with the Millville and the Ocean Views and the Selbyvilles and, you know, the towns that are probably going to be created as a result of all this. So a lot of good stuff, but I think we have the courage and fortitude to do it with keeping our vision out there and working that way. So.
We might get a little repetition on this one, but I'm a newspaper person. That's what we do. We're going to start with Mr. Rush. If there's one new initiative or one specific point of emphasis you would like council to focus on over these next 2 years, what would it be?
So much like your question, my answer might be a little repetitive as well, but no, and Mickey was just touching on it. It's the regional growth side of it, and just getting ahead of what may come, and then the things that we would be facing. For me, that's the one of most interest right now, and within that issue for me is also, and again, new to this, but sometimes how long things take from a government perspective, and that's not a criticism of the council. It's just recognition of the many channels that you have to go through, and what are some ways that we as a council can focus on breaking those log jams if we can. Again, I'm green when it comes to that in terms of experience, but you know, from my private experience, that's one of the things that I've always been somebody that bit of a driver. So I don't know if there's ways that we can attack it there, but a little bit of repetition in terms of the issue, but that's what it is.
Mr. Califf.
I think I would have to go along with, we have a tremendous amount of population growth to the west of us. You know, it's not something that you can just be blind to, because it's something we have to live with. Controlling it in a smart way is what we're going to have to deal with over the future. Some people say, you know, parking, we need more parking. Well, we added some parking this year, but really, that parking was really making up for parking spaces we've lost over the years from new development, new houses, streetscapes, added work in other areas. The town, to keep physically strong, has to maintain at least 1,000 paid parking spaces every year. That's kind of the magic number right now. It may increase over time, but that's the kind of the magic number that helps us to get to our the revenues that we need to cover all the costs of the town. And the cost of this town during the summer is amazing. I mean, we have 120 plus employees, new employees, that come in just for the summer. You know, when you're talking 60 to 70 lifeguards down there, and these guys are tremendous. But you're also talking the seasonal police, and you're talking public works, you're talking, you know, many positions in the town. But it's amazing a town can do that, bring in that many new people, and there's a lot of cost there, not to mention other things like our concerts and everything else. So, thank you.
Mr. Hinman.
Thank you. So I think, and it's an interesting question, because you talk about one new initiative, and it's clearly not a new initiative, but it's certainly a point of emphasis. Is this whole idea of, I think, resiliency, particularly around everything to do with climate change, water level rise, flooding, all those issues, beach replenishment, right? All those issues are foundational to this town, and we're fighting some headwinds here, right? I mean, water levels are not going down, they're going up. It's a matter of how fast and when. So all the challenges we have are going to be even more pronounced around that. Beach replenishment, making that sure beaches are healthy, they're vibrant, they're a great place for people to come and want to spend time, is going to be a real challenge. So I think that the opportunity is to really think about resilience and even planning for those really worst-case scenarios, right? When the bad storms hit, the hurricanes hit, and we've done a lot of work around that. That's the planning for that. But that's all part of a resilience. I really think we need to breathe new life into that in terms of what it means to the town and how we work toward those issues. Not one standalone kind of issues, but they all have to be integrated together, really. So I think that's one of our probably most important challenges I see going forward.
Mr. McHugh.
I'm going to come at this question maybe in a slightly different way and on just focus on the point of emphasis issue and not the problems that we're contending with. And from my point of view, we need to continue to focus on communication. The ability for us to communicate well and quickly with our residents, with our businesses. Some of our residents are here all the time. A lot of our residents are not here all the time. The world is moving faster and faster. So rather than focus on what problems we have, I think we have to focus on our communication skills from a governmental standpoint. We've made tremendous strides over the last couple of years here, but we can do better, and I think we're going to have to continue to focus on how to do better in terms of daily communications, what's going on in town, when storms are coming, what to do, when other issues are having to be dealt with, what to do. And as a side function of that, and this could be a can of worms, perhaps we should focus on streamlining our website in a way that makes it easier for everybody to use it. A website should be easy if it's going to be useful, and maybe there are ways that we can make it more user-friendly.
Mr. Califf, what is your take on the offshore wind farms and the good neighbor agreements?
Well, as we all know, the offshore wind farms are a federal program. It's not a Town of Bethany Beach program. It's not a state program, although I guess you could say the state is involved when the power comes in and what they're talking about up here at 3Rs. But as far as Bethany Beach, it's nothing we have control over. You know, it's a very hot issue around, everybody talking about it. I appreciate what they're saying, I understand what they're saying, but it's not something we really have a whole lot of control over. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, you know, some people think one way, some people think another way. It's a very vocal group that are apparently against the wind farms. That's the way they feel, but we also have to think in terms of our energy and our working toward getting to a green energy effort. The state of Delaware puts out an incredible amount of money, millions of dollars each year, buying energy credits from other states because we have no energy credits directly involved here in the state. We need to do something there. So, and as far as the Good Neighbor Agreement, I think it's called the Community Benefits Agreement. Everybody knows we had a public hearing about that back in the winter. We had good vibes, good people came in. It was a lively conversation, to say the least. There were some good things that came out of that. You know, Bethany hasn't done anything on it, and I don't think we will for some time, at least until Boehm reaches their agreements, which, you know, I know they have one coming up here September the 5th, and then their final will be coming up the end of the year where they act on the proposed construction plan for the wind farms. And I'm sure after that point, there's going to be some lawsuits that are going to, you know, slow it down. You know, government never moves quickly, so we'll see what happens there.
Mr. Hinman.
So I want to be really, really clear, at least from my perspective of this. And it's a great question, but I got to break it down a little bit, right? Because there's a couple things. So number one, I firmly believe, without a doubt, that the science says we are significantly impacting our climate, right? Over the last 150 years, we've made great progress as a human race, but there's been some costs to that. And we need to do things differently as a result. I'm not talking about this project versus that project. I'm talking about in general. And I think it's going to be one of the biggest challenges our human race really has of how do we do that, right? How do we work ahead and think we all have to do something? And it's not just one project here. It's a whole bunch of things, right? It's wind, it's solar, it's carbon sequestration, it's hydrogen, it's all bunch of things. It's nuclear, it's all of that. So big picture, I believe it's a real, truly most important thing we're going to be working at. And it's not for, with all respect here, it's not the people that are in this room that are going to pay for this. And ultimately, all right, in terms of the consequences, it's going to be our kids, their kids, their kids, right? And we need to start doing things now. Big picture. So now when we start talking about the specific initiative with U.S. Wind, that's moving along. We've got all the right, I believe. I trust the agencies that are looking at it. There's all kinds of scrutiny going into what's going to work and what has to be approved. I trust those groups from the Department of Defense all the way down to give us the right recommendations on that. That's what we're waiting for right now, right? So I trust where they come out with that, or what recommendations, do we go forward or not? The last piece about this is the community benefit agreement, and again, to Ron's point, again, that generated, I think you were pretty kind about how we got a lot of good comments. There's a lot of comment on it, right? And the good thing is, right, we did get a lot of input. So the opportunity we have is to listen to that input, right, and see what we can do to negotiate, change, if we even want to support it, right? When we haven't, to Ron's point, we haven't decided that yet. The time will come where we have to make a decision, but we also want to listen to what people gave us feedback on and how we can make that, if we accept that agreement, how can we make it even better, right, for the communities involved. So a lot more to come, and I think the key is we just got to keep talking to each other and not in a you're wrong, you're right, but in a listening, integrative kind of, let's try to move forward with it. Thank you.
Mr. McHugh.
I guess like these folks, I think we have to break this down into two different pieces when we analyze it. And from the point of view of the wind farms themselves, or whether they're a good idea, whether they're being installed as designed in a good way, it's a very complicated process. I've read through parts of the BOEM economic analysis, 600 and some page report. Didn't read 660 some pages, but I did read the summaries of what's in there. There doesn't seem to be anything that's in that summary that would be considered fatal from a point of view of the project moving forward. I'm a mere lawyer, what do I know? But from the way I analyzed it, it doesn't seem like that's going to be something that's going to block it. But having read it, I also came to the rapid conclusion that it's really difficult for someone like me, who's not well-schooled or even well counseled on this yet, to make a position as to whether, this is a good idea or a bad idea, or whether it should move forward as designed. It's very complicated. It needs to be handled by the experts. I, too, have great faith in the government, to both the state and the Fed government, to handle this correctly. So I really am not sure I can take a definitive position on it. I do know that our town has not been asked, or doesn't have the authority to take that definitive position as well. So I'll leave that there. On the community benefits agreement side, these things are very common. They happen a lot, in not just government settings, but in private settings. I've actually worked on these agreements before in my previous life. They're not inherently a bad idea. In fact, I don't think they are a bad idea at all. But what you need to be careful about is so you don't get tied into a situation where you're boxed in. This agreement was done and presented to us, drafted by the other side of what would be an agreement if one were ever to be signed, and there would be a normal negotiation stage that will follow. So I think we should wait and see how this agreement as modified, if we're ever going to agree to it, it's not going to be the agreement that was first presented to us.
Mr. Rush.
Thank you. This is one of those chunky issues, right? For me, wind farms I'm not in favor of. That's just a matter of where my position is at the moment. It's not because I'm not for green energy. I just don't believe it's the right thing to do for Bethany Beach and the surrounding areas. As far as the good neighbor agreements, I think there's a lot of potential unintended consequences that could come with that, with those agreements. So that's another one for me in terms of, again, a lot to learn, a lot to hear, if there's discussions on it, but those type of agreements for me, the unintended consequences and then what could happen downstream with those are not worth it, in my opinion.
We're going to start with Mr. Hinman on this question. What responsibility, if any, does the town have in helping the downtown business community excel?
Well, I think, as some of us talked about before, when we think about the quiet resort and what that means, right? We think about it in the context of individual, family kind of thing, but it also has traditionally been based as well as that partnership with our businesses. I mean, you need both things to work. So absolutely, we need to be partnering, talking, engaging, getting input. I think that's a foundation of this, what makes Bethany special, right? How do we keep it unique? How do we keep it different? And there's nothing wrong with Lewis and Dewey and Ocean City. They're all great communities, Fenwick, but we have something really unique and special here too, right? And how do we make that success? How do we allow that to thrive, realizing that really successful businesses, right, and entrepreneurs that are coming here are part of that success over time. So reaching out, it really spurred some things for me personally, because some of you know I like to talk and engage with people, and you know what I have done, even sometimes with a PowerPoint, who knows, but you know what I've done with this, and it's really an opportunity for me, if I had the privilege of serving another term, is do more of this, because what I've tended to do is talk to the business owners that I've already known, you know, that are the easy relationships I already have. And what I really ought to be doing is knocking on doors even more for the folks I don't know and engaging with them and taking that to the next step. So it's really been the question itself has provoked some inward thought from my perspective of how I can do that better. So,
Mr. McHugh.
Well, I think that our town government has a great responsibility to foster a partnership with our businesses. We need them to some extent. They need us. They certainly need access to our residents. So I think the responsibility is great. I also think that this answer ties into what I said earlier about communications. I think that for us to foster better relationships with our businesses, we need to know more about what they need from us or think they need from us. And also they need to know from us what we can do for them, because maybe sometimes we can't do what they want us to do. And whatever those answers are, we need to spread the word out to everybody else in the community, because once people know what's going on, people are going to be happier, they're going to be better customers, the businesses will come here more frequently, they'll stay here longer. So it's a symbiotic relationship that has to be continued to grow as time goes on. And we as the government do have a responsibility for fostering that and improving that all the time.
Mr. Rush.
Yeah, a lot of the same themes. I mean, for me, businesses, residents, non-residents, it's all about engagement on the issues and concerns that businesses may or may not have. And then as a council, it's to facilitate forums where we can help in the areas we can to facilitate and attract more business for them, right? Whether it's through the community events, things of that nature, which are fantastic and bring more people into town, or are there any concerns or issues they have around the aspect of them being able to engage in their businesses, right? Ultimately, it always just comes down to the simple engagement, discussions, and facilitation, and having good communications, much like Rich was saying. Pretty simple and hopefully easy to do.
Mr. Califf.
Well, I may have a little bit different perspective because I'm one of the market managers and have a lot of responsibility with the farmers market here in town, which is a business. It's a 501c. We work with other businesses around because we don't want to conflict with them. That being, we don't sell coffee in the market, so we're not conflicting with all those other vendors that do sell coffee. We've also had I've had direct contact with other businesses where they perceived that we were selling something that was similar to them, to what they sold. I'm not sure I had the same perspective, but we did reach a very common goal on that, and we were both happy at the end of the day. But so I've had some definite experience with with the businesses. On the another aspect of this, the town does meet usually with Cliff Gravier, the town manager, and the mayor, and some of the council members with businesses. They invite them into town hall, and we have like a forum usually at the end of the season and the beginning of the season to see what their concerns are, to kind of discuss, what they see as that we could do to help them. The chamber is also involved in that. So the town, I think, does do good things with the merchants. We certainly want them to do well. We want them to excel, and they're a vibrant part of this community.
Well, we're going to open this up to questions from the audience, and the town has generously supplied some people here to help us out. They ask that you speak directly into the microphone when they come around, so please just raise your hand if you have any questions here.
Hi, my name is Carla Bix, and we've had a house down here for 20 years. 30? Oh, 30 years. And I used to come down here all summer with my 3 kids, and we had a great time, and they worked. However, there was something 30 years ago that we don't have now. We used to have a very flat beach with the rocks. Remember the rocks? That used to be in the water. Remember that? It used to control the water coming in. There were no big waves. I know some people are going to disagree with me, but I think beach replenishment is a waste of time and a waste of money. The last time they did the beach, they were so far behind that we had to cancel the fireworks. It was not fair. And then they did a great replenishment. We had the first Northeast, took it all away. When the ocean takes away the sand, it brings it back. I've seen that over year, over year, over year. So I don't know what this beach replenishment does for us. I really don't. So that's my, sure, no one's going to agree with me with that, but that's the way I feel.
Anybody up here like to address that?
Well, I'd be glad to take a start. I mean, I think it's, and I'm not a scientist on that. I mean, there's a lot of science behind that as well. And I do reflect back, we used to have some of the jetty kind of things there, and I think they were actually removed because of the potential.
They're still there.
They've just been covered up.
They've
Okay.
been covered.
Okay. I mean, that's a proposal folks have talked about, building those out, I guess is what I'm really talking about. The beach replenishment, I think you're exactly right. It's a real challenge because I don't think by thinking we replenish the beach tomorrow, we've now solved something for 50 years. This is almost a ongoing process, and I think all of you know, if you look at how Bethany is sort of positioned, right, it sort of juts out a little bit. So we're really battling Mother Nature, right? I mean, literally, If you look at where Bethany Beach, really downtown, it literally sits out, and Mother Nature doesn't like that, right? It wants to even it up. So,
This summer, the beach took it away. I mean, the beach was like half the size. And then the water pushed it back, and we had a big beach again. But it's the same thing.
Well,
Well,
do you remember,
there's,
do you remember in 2006, before they put the dune in out there, when it was high tide, and this is normal, the tide would come right in under the boardwalk. That was the amount of beach we had. The only way to have a beach is to have replenishment. If we did not have replenishment, have you just seen what happened up at the inlet? It was over the road, breached over the road. That's what's going to happen. If we have a Sandy, the ocean is going to be right down here by Town Hall.
And you think the replenishment is going to stop?
It's going to hold it at bay. That's all we can do.
What about the dunes? You know, the dunes are put in to help, you know? And there was somebody on the panel who said Rehoboth has the dunes as well, but they have them down a little bit so you can see the ocean. I remember walking
Okay.
the boardwalk and seeing the ocean.
I'd be glad to answer that one. I mean, the dune is designed by the Corps of Engineers. It's not designed by the town. 85% of this town is below sea level, is within the floodplain. If you go up to Rehoboth, they are located much higher than we are. That's why their dune is not as high. Their elevation of the town is much higher. We are much, much lower. 85% of this town is below sea level.
Did any of the other
you know,
candidates-
And if that dune wasn't there, we would be in tough shape. I mean,
you know, the thing that's most apparent, ma'am, that most apparent for me, and again, I'm not an expert on but literally, it was last year where we had it was a prolonged nor'easter of about 6 days, and you walked on that beach, right? If that dune hadn't been there, I mean, it literally cut that beach like it was butter, or, you know, a hot knife on butter. It literally was, and it was halfway up. If that dune wasn't there, you just shudder. What would have happened, right? Okay, okay, I thought you were talking about
well, that's part of replenishment.
yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
replenishment does.
yeah, right.
Either of you two want to weigh in on this?
I think everything I guess from a non-scientific standpoint too, if you look at the changes in climate that, you know, what was happening 30 years ago is not what's happening now and won't be what's happening 30 years from now. You know, the beach does return, the sand does return to some extent. It has been. That's also been the rule in places like North Carolina. And frankly, it isn't working there anymore. Houses are coming down because the beaches are not solving their problem anymore. So I don't think we can solve this problem at the same time we forget that our world is changing. It's not our fault. We didn't necessarily here do anything about it, but it is a fact. And we have to adjust to what's going on in our world. I just think it's a fact.
For me, it's a circumstance of where Bethany is on the coastline, and also if we do not replenish, we will have issues from just generally to the town in terms of viability of the town. I'm pretty sure if a storm comes through, you're going to impact businesses, you're going to impact a lot of different things. So it's a necessary evil in my opinion.
I'm glad you asked that question, though. We get that at the newspaper quite a bit, too, so thank you. Any other questions?
Hi. My name is Janice Holland, and I've been coming here since the 80s, so somebody else can do the math. But anecdotally, I came across a picture from that time, and the beach looked like it does now. But the difference was the boardwalk. And I do remember when the dunes were built, there was a lot of pushback because people were afraid of their views, which is actually leading to the question I wanted to address besides the dunes. But the dunes are helping us. It may not seem like it. But whenever there's change for environmental reasons or whatever, there is a lot of pushback because we live in the now, but we're seeing the damage that that's causing. So I'm curious about, I think it was you, Mickey, that brought up environmental concerns in particular. We all know that plastics are bad for the ocean. And I know small businesses have their concerns with costs, but I know there's been a push to ban plastic bags and straws, but you still see them being sold and bought. I'm curious, has Bethany considered a total ban to plastic bags? There's a program in Alaska, you can't get a plastic bag anywhere. And so it's almost like, do we want to get serious about the environment, or say we're going to take care of it someday and be where we are now, because it's just accelerating? So it'd be really interesting to hear what you all would think about a full ban on that. Also, revisiting our lights. We've put up brighter lights, which is bad for birds, for all the night creatures. The boardwalk is bad. People are putting up these ridiculously bright lights. And I know that there's been a lot of studies about the impact of the wildlife on that. So I'm sort of curious if Bethany Beach does have a plan to address, say, a blanket view that can be implemented and maybe be the flagship for the coast of Delaware. I mean, why not? Well, Bethany did it and it's working. We're saving the birds, we're saving the bats, whatever.
Well, I think, again, those are, I think, are great ideas. I mean, I think I would definitely want to think about, can we, again, we're a little town, what impact are we going to have, right? But it's a lot of little impacts that can make a difference over a broader community. So if we're doing again, it comes back to a little bit we were talking about before, is that the right thing to do as a community? Is that the right thing to sort of set a standard? Is that the right thing to say, we're willing to take some of the grief that goes with that because we believe that this? I absolutely think it's something we ought to consider. Why not, right? But so I don't think I don't recall anything in the last couple of years where we've talked about it, but it's certainly, other communities are, right, and I'm not sure around the beach communities, but
I
I'm
guess
sure.
my question would be, does the town have adequate authority to do something like that, or is that a state-given authority? Can we do that on our own, even from that point of view? Whether it's a good idea or not, I don't know that we have the adequate authority to do it on our own. States give towns rights to do certain things and don't allow them to do certain other things, and I just don't know the answer to that, but we'd have to look into that before we could move forward, I would think.
Well, it's a frustration. I was going down the beach one morning and I watched somebody pick up, their garbage, their fast food, and they literally just left it. And I just had my knee replaced, so I couldn't chase them. So, but if I were 20, maybe I would. And I think we're all old enough to remember, the push to keep America green, because there was so much pollution, and there was a push, and it did last. And so I'm sort of confused, like, why are we getting this filthy dirty? Why do we even tolerate garbage? I'm not saying we have to be disrespectful to people, but, when the summer comes around, we have people who are here for a few days at a time, but they really don't have the investment that all the people in this room have and more. Right. And so when I see a plastic bag being thrown right near the ocean or the canals or wherever, it just seems that there's got to be something we can do, that we're allowed to do in the state of Delaware.
Hi, I'm her mother.
Yeah, I would agree with you too. I think it's something we should look into relative to the plastics, and you're absolutely right. People, the amount of trash that gets thrown around here is incredible. And going back to the light pollution you talked about or referred to, we do have some requirements for residential areas for light pollution. And maybe we need to focus a little bit more down on the commercial areas, but you're also balancing safety, and that can be a key thing. So, yeah, I agree with you. We probably should look at something there.
I don't know, I live in DC and it's a lot safer here.
I wanted to bring up another issue, environmental issue. We know that trees drink up a lot of water. I live out in Tingle's Addition, and we get flooded like crazy. Yet we've had trees, I mean, people just are coming in and cutting trees down. They're called Evergreen, that construction company. And so what is the town going to do about that? About keeping our green space green with trees? That would help a little bit with flood. Not solve the problem, but it would be a lot nicer than cutting them down and flooding. I had minnows swimming on my deck from the canal flooding.
Well,
So
I know there has been, planning and zoning has been working on, and we have implemented tree requirements on all lots now. That's a very
Good.
new initiative. And it's being pushed to be expanded on, so I fully agree with you there. It needs to be,
Yeah.
it needs to be controlled, and we need to maintain as much vegetation as we can. There was also the new pervious pavement requirements, which is has been instituted so that lots have to have a certain amount of pervious requirement on them so that water can be absorbed. And that's also leads to, you got to have so much natural material, whether it's you know, growing plants or mulch or something like that, but areas that water can be absorbed. I mean, yes, it's a green thing, but it's also a matter of flooding control in the community. We need to be able to create circumstances where water is being absorbed rather than running off.
Yes. We also, the flooding back in Tingle's Addition on Evans is so bad sometimes. If we had to get an ambulance through there, I don't know if they could get through there. I mean, it really gets deep. That's what the dam is for, but it's not here yet.
No, it's not here yet.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's a great point. You think about the bigger picture and what it's about doing things incrementally that all add up, right? Your point's really good. This is something I'm actually on the board. We live in Bethany West, and I'm on the board of that. And one of the things we've been talking about, we haven't really done anything yet, is requiring or thinking about if you take a tree down. Like I had to take a couple trees down because from a safety perspective, right? But we ended up taking 2 down and we put 6 up. They were smaller, they were more, right? Because we actually wanted to absorb the water. But how can we do that, right? So that we maintain the environmental impact, but also be sensitive to the fact I don't want that tree that's now starting to be diseased to fall into the house either. So it's that balance, and how can we do, I think our challenge is what can we do from a sort of a governance perspective to encourage and get people to think that way.
I was on the board of my community in Montgomery County, and if we cut a tree down, we had to replace it like immediately.
Right. It's a difficult
county
situation in
rule.
this town because people want to put down as much solid surface as they can, because they don't want to have maintenance. They don't want to come down here and on their vacation, and it's their house, and they have to weed, or take care of things. So
Right.
they cover it up with whatever they can so that they don't have that much work to do. But that's
Right. And if you
that's
don't
not
weed,
the way
the town sends you a
it should
letter.
be. Right.
Any other questions? She'll come up with you next.
Sorry. My name is Claire Evans Layton, and I'm probably the oldest one here, or who has lived in Bethany for the longest time. I'm part of the Evans in the Bethany book and all that kind of stuff, and I've lived here 77 years. So needless to say, I've seen changes. My issue My issue is the wind farm. I heard what you said. You trust the governmental reports. I find that challenging in the research that I have done and the meetings that I have attended. I don't know, nor have I read of any that have been established to the degree that this one is being proposed anywhere along the East Coast. 114 wind turbines, over 900 feet tall, each one on a concrete base of over an acre, each containing over 100 gallons of oil, requiring maintenance. And we stand here or sit here and talk about environment. It seems very hypocritical to me to be talking about that. I'm for trees, but there will be a great deal more effect in the research that I've done and in the meetings that I have attended. Now you say, what can you do? And I know it's not a Bethany Beach issue, but this is also what I do know. You can take a stand. You can make a stand, and because of your position, you will be heard. Whether you're going to have an effect, I think you will. Go back to the Revolutionary War. I know that's back, but there were a few people who took a stand and made a nation. I'm asking you to take a stand. Don't destroy what you so diligently are working to preserve, because long term, you have no data at all that reflects what the long-term effect this is going to have. I think you really need to consider that. So that's my plea to you, and needless to say, that's how I'll vote and how I will express my opinion to those with whom I speak. Thank you.
Anybody like to respond to that?
Well, ma'am, I mean, it's a great comment. I appreciate that, and we can have, like I say, we can have a difference of opinion. Globally, all over the world, wind farms are very, very successful. They haven't been on the East Coast or necessarily on the West Coast. So, I mean, again, we can differ, okay? And that's okay. That's okay. I tried to be as direct and honest with you as I could be around, and not necessarily those necessarily, because I do trust that the right people are looking at it in terms of the requirements from the nature perspective, from a Department of Defense perspective, from a radar issue. I think the right people are looking at it from what I can tell. I mean, you're shaking your head and saying, no, we can disagree. That's okay. I'm just, because I probably took a stand on it, and I'm very willing to stand behind it, and that we have to make change across the globe, right? And I'm not even saying this is the best project, right? But I was trying to say, if we're not doing things across the board, this is an existential threat to our global community. And that's not going to solve it by itself, obviously, right? But those kind of things, using all kinds of different technologies, and in technologies that haven't even been invented yet, that our kids are going to invent, are going to be part of the solution. But we have to start doing things, and we already are doing things. We need to continue. That's just how I feel about it. So, whether that goes or not, the bigger issue really is even for Delaware, right? Delaware's legislature has just passed that they want to actually bring and generate more of their electrical footprint from wind. That's no longer, off of Maryland's coast. That might be off of our coast. So because that's sort of reflecting the challenges we're all facing. And we can disagree again, but I'm trying to be clear where I stand too. So.
Hello, my name's Mark Bixon. I've been here as a landowner for about 30 years now. I have a much simpler issue that I'd like to address that I think the city has more control over, and that's speed bumps. We live on Parkwood Street, and sometimes the cars are moving kind of fast, and there's no sidewalk. So I believe it's a safety issue. I would like to see more speed bumps put on the streets between Route 1 and the beach.
That's something to be looked into. We have added speed bumps around town where there's been new projects. You know, out in Collins, for instance, there were speed bumps added, and there are a couple of speed bumps down over here on Oakwood has speed bumps on it.
But there's none
And
on
yeah,
Parkwood. That's
yeah, I know everybody has the perception, and they are in a lot of instances speeding, but you know a lot of people aren't speeding too, but you know, I agree with you, we need to slow people down. And if, you know, I don't know whether Mickey, did you mention this? I mean, we've lowered the speed limits on several streets just this year. I think you may have noticed that out on 26, it got dropped to 30 miles an hour, and on Kent, it got dropped to 25. So that has already happened.
yeah, but there's no
I see you back and forth here. You just want, speed bumps is the issue? Well, we can certainly look into it.
Yeah.
What streets in particular are you talking about?
I'm talking Parkwood.
You live on Parkwood?
Yes,
I live on Parkwood. I live on the 300 block of Parkwood, and what are you on the 200 block?
So,
Where people are turning down to go down to the beach.
Yeah.
So,
It might
sir-
be a good idea to put one on Parkwood.
So, sir, what I'd ask you to do, too, is help us, Teresa and I'd mentioned before, lead the Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee. One of the things, as part of this regeneration of that, one of the things we did last year was have a session in in October, where we really got a lot of community input to ask the community, what are the things you want to work on? And sort of the way we're thinking about it are like infrastructure kind of projects, right? And I would say a speed bump sort of infrastructure, you know, you got to build, not huge infrastructure, but you got to build it. There's more education, development kind of things, and there's some other things that might be around signage. We're going to have a session, Teresa, I'm drawing a blank, October 24th, maybe? We're going to communicate, but our goal is to have as many people in the community come together. We're just going to whiteboard it, sir, and say, what are the things you have in, we're not going to try to solve it. So I'd encourage you to participate in that and get that up there, because then we can, what we're going to do is step back and then as a team try to decide what are our priorities, what are the things we want to go forward with, right? So does that make sense? I mean, would you be willing to, yeah.
And I want to just reinforce that Mickey's committee has been doing a tremendous job on safety issues in town, and it's incredible what they've been doing and the things they've been able to accomplish. So, and that's just in the last couple of years. So please come.
Teresa and I.
Teresa,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Any other questions tonight? Well, can we thank these candidates for showing up here tonight? Thank all of you for showing up, and remember to get out and vote next Saturday, noon to 6. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
It's fun.
Good job. Good job. Yep. Very good job. Thank you.